So a couple of things as we get started. One, we are recording today, so you should get that message that we are recording. Two, if you're like, hey, I was just here in April with you guys, absolutely, right? It is important to us that we see you and we look at you and talk to you one more time before you get on that plane. So some of the things may feel like they are repeat information. That is intentional, and it is important. It is important that you hear and that you think about these things and that we talk about them together. Some of the things, like Sean said, are new. There are case studies of things that have happened this summer where we want you to put yourselves in this position and think, okay, what would I do and what are my next steps, right? So that you are more prepared than ever to have this awesome experience. All right. Can everybody see a slide that says meeting agenda? Thumbs up if you can. Nice. Okay. So these are the buckets of things that we're going to be talking about. 5 things: academics, finances, health, safety, and then that tiny percentage possibility of an emergency. At the end of this, there is going to be a mandatory assessment. However, if you have taken that assessment already, you will not be sent the assessment to take. So do not think you need to take the assessment twice. But it is important that we have these conversations with you and we give you that space to hear this information and to ask questions again. All right, so let's talk a little bit about academics, credits, expectations. There are 5 types of programs here. 1, faculty-directed programs. 2, affiliate programs. 3, direct enroll. 4, exchange. And 5, internships. Everybody on this call should be in probably 1 through 4. Okay, so the type of credit that you're receiving and some of the steps that you need to take actually matter, and they're different depending on the program that you are enrolled in. Okay, we're going to talk through what that looks like. If you are doing a faculty directed program, so if you are headed to Japan with the College of Architecture this fall, that is a faculty directed program. Pretty much everybody else on this call, short of our MBA programs or EMBA programs, everybody else, you are doing either a direct exchange or affiliate program. Here's what this means for you. If you're a faculty directed, if you're headed to Japan, your credit is UT, your course is UT. You do not have to worry about your credit being transferred or any sort of evaluation of the course that you take, apart from the normal degree requirements that you have here on campus. If you are a direct exchange or affiliate program participant, you should have completed your request for transfer credit form. That is called RTCF. Often you might have seen some emails or reminders about it. That is something you need to have complete before you depart, so that you know how the courses that you take abroad impact your transcript and the courses that you need to continue to take here for your degree requirements at UT. That's because you're going with a different institution, different course names, different syllabi. All of it has to be done in advance. You can see in the rest of the chart here, so is your GPA affected by the grades? So your UT and your HOPE GPA are affected by the grades that you have in your faculty-directed program. And your HOPE GPA is what's affected by your grades that come back from the direct affiliate and exchange programs. If there are questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we've got our Programs Abroad team that can help you. If you've got a specific scenario or situation that you want to talk through, these are the people that you can talk to as well, and you can send us an email to volsabroad@utk.edu. So in thinking about how to actually make this happen, for example, for everybody going to Japan, please make sure that you are enrolled in your course and your set of semester courses that you're going to have during the scope of your semester-long program with the College of Architecture. Please make sure that you have enrolled as you would your standard UT courses. Please make sure for everybody else that you've completed that request for transfer for credit form. And if you are waiting for information or anything is in flux about that, we can always help you figure out where that is. You also can see as you log in and see your form, where that is too, in terms of, is it with financial aid? Is it with our office? Where might it be? One thing to consider for, this is going to be for direct affiliate and exchange participants. While you're abroad, you need to make sure that the courses that you enroll in are the courses that you put on your request for transfer credit form. If anything is different, I need you to reach out to our office and let us know, because we're going to walk you through the process of completing a new request for transfer credit form. This doesn't happen often, but what we're trying to do here is empower you to be able to say, hey, this is different from what I put on my form. I need to rectify this, and I need to get it right, and I need to get it approved. Questions on this here? I'm seeing some stuff come up in the chat. Awesome. Yes. So if your program is through ISA, you are an affiliate. Okay. So here's an example of our first case study we're going to do together as a group. You arrive to your program only to find that you're not able to get into all of the courses you plan to take this fall. Moreover, the courses that you were already approved to take on your request for transfer credit form are not available. What do? Why is this so important to consider? Take a moment to think, and when you're, let's do 20 seconds, and then you can put your answers in the chat. All right, we've got our answer ready to go, but I want to see what you guys are thinking about. So feel free to drop your answer of what you think you should do in the chat. Awesome. You guys are great. Somebody wrote to me directly and said, enroll in courses that can still count to your major. Reach out to advisors. Absolutely. You guys are all on the right track with what you're saying. You know, sometimes it can feel confusing or overwhelming. And so I'm not asking you to remember this process exactly as it is verbatim right now. What I'm asking you to do is remember, hey, if there's a change to your course, your planned courses you were going to take, you need to reach out to us. You need to reach out to your advisor. You need to reach out to One Stop, for example. All of that's going to come back to us, and we're going to redirect you to that request for transfer credit form, right? So that you can get all of that approved again and go through that process, right? So all of this is great. And maybe don't panic a little, right? Because we're going to help you, right? That's the purpose of that form. That's the purpose of these processes, so that we can make sure that we help you take care of all of that. So as you can see here, all of this is exactly where you guys were. Make sure you're notifying your advisor. Do not just trust that that request for transfer credit form is just going to weave its way through the waves of UT, right? Make sure that you are saying, hey, advisor, anticipate this form is coming at you. This is what happened. I need your help, right? Be as advocating for yourself as you can be. Follow up, make sure that we either received your form, that we have everything that we need, or if you have any questions, you can always ask, where is the form in process? Make sure that form gets complete. The reason why this is important, we want to make sure that your courses are approved for CPOS, Course Program of Study. The bottom line here is we want to make sure you have enough pre-approved courses that all of your financial aid and scholarships can apply towards your program fees to study abroad. That's the bottom line. We worry that if something happens and your courses change and they haven't been pre-approved, that you might be put into repayment for financial aid. And we want to make sure that we help you avoid that. That is the only reason that we want to support you and make sure that we are highlighting the urgency and the importance around that for your course changes. Okay. We're going to shift and talk about money. First thing I want you to know. So your courses and your programs are recognized by UT. And you need to make sure that they are eligible to transfer back and count towards your degree. All of that stuff with the request for transfer credit process we talked through. And that you have registered through our office and submitted that form. Here's why. Billing has already started for your fall courses and tuition. You might have seen that on your My UTK already. The payment deadlines for everything is August 15th. That is earlier than it has ever been. We want you to know that these fees and things are posted to your account, and the deadline is August 15th. Generally speaking, if you're getting excess financial aid or anything that would be deposited to your bank account, that happens within the first 2 to 3 weeks of the start of the UT term. So if you're thinking about budgeting and financing some of your studies or elements of your program abroad, that's when you can expect to see that excess aid check hit your account.
How would we, I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but how do we get either a slip of paper or a document that basically says, hey, we know that you're relying on these funds, but these funds will come in 2 to 3 weeks after the term starts. Here's to my affiliate program. Here's that little piece of paper that basically says, hey, please don't screw me over on this. Like how would I get that?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I appreciate you asking it for the group. It depends on your program. Each company, each institution might do it differently, but the point of what you're saying is that all of them should have a form like that, right? And they should give it to you, you fill it out. It would go through UT to have UT approval, and then you'd send it back to them. So no issue there. If you need help for your specific program, you can reach out to us, and we can let you know either how to navigate finding that form, advocating for you with the organization, or what have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Okay, we're going to shift away from UT finance stuff and then talk about finance while you're abroad. So these are some things that you need to be thinking about, right? Currency exchange and exchange rates are real, and they can impact how you spend your money. Access to cash is real, and it can impact how you spend your money. So the big piece of this is plan ahead, right? Use your online currency converters to understand your country's exchange rate. You can do that through Google. I know that there's some apps out there. Team, if you guys want to put those in the chat, that might be helpful. The other piece is think about how you're going to spend your money, right? And how being in a different place and having a different, it's not the same as living in Knoxville, right? So what elements of your lifestyle might change to help you impact or to help you think about that budgeting impact to your experience. And then finally, research the cost of living in your host country. There are all kinds of tools for this out there as well that are fun to use, that can help you anticipate how far a dollar might go in your country. One of them is the Big Mac index, where you can see, okay, how much does a Big Mac cost in each country to kind of get an idea, right? Because if a Big Mac is considerably more expensive where you're headed, then you need to know to budget a little bit differently, right? If it's considerably cheaper, then you might know, okay, if the cost of a Big Mac is less, then maybe my dollar goes a little bit further. So those are some things that we can include for you if those are helpful resources. Okay. So we have a student who has recently graduated, who studied abroad, and I would love for her to share about her experience. She's going to pop in and out here during our time to talk about some of these topics and really get a student experience. So Amy, I'll pass it to you to talk about how you money managed when you were abroad, and feel free to share where you went and a little bit about your experience as well.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a recent graduate. I studied abroad this time last year, so summer in between my junior and senior year. I went to Gwangju, South Korea. It was great. I went with an affiliate program. And as far as money, kind of one of the tips that I had was like knowing the exchange rate, but kind of having like a rough estimate of how it exchanges. Like when I was there, obviously they had Korean won, and I would look at something, and if it was 25,000, yeah, 25,000 Korean won, I knew it was roughly a little less than $25, but I kind of just turned that comma into a period, and that was like a rough blanket. It doesn't have to be exact, but I found that like having it kind of a baseline knowledge of like helps a lot, so you don't have to pull up a converter each time. Another thing that I wanted to give to you guys as advice would be to always have cash, like get it early and always have some on you, because even if you like call your banks and tell them you're going to be out of the country, I did the same thing. I get on a 7-minute bus ride, and then I try and buy something for like $45, and I triggered a fraud alert, and my card got frozen for like the rest of the day, and I had to get a friend because I didn't have any cash on me. So it's just kind of good to always be prepared. I know that nobody carries cash these days, but it's always good to have a little.
Awesome. Well, guys, keep questions coming either in the chat, or there's a small enough amount of us. If you want to come off mute, that's totally fine. All right. So we've talked through the majority of things around what to expect for academics, finances, and now we get to talk about the really fun stuff, right? Health and safety during your time abroad. So I'll pass it over to Sean to take us through some of that. Keep in mind, there's still going to be case studies. Amy's still going to be coming in and out. The content is just going to shift to the health and safety piece.
Great. Thank you, Annalise, and thanks, Amy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about health safety, some best practices, tips, tricks. So again, some of this might be a little bit self-explanatory, but not everyone's gone abroad before. So we want to make sure we're hitting everybody at their different levels. So apologies if some of this seems like, no-brainer too. So next slide, please. We're going to start with health abroad, and we're going to dive in with mental health. So what I want you to do before you travel, right about now, well, many of you are a few weeks out, or just a week or two out, and so I want you to think about, what are you bringing with you on this program in terms of your own mental health. You might have a mental health diagnosis, or something that you're struggling with, whether that might be something like depression or anxiety that you might not actually be diagnosed with, and you might not be having medication for, but it's something that you struggle with. And so I want you to think about what do you experience here in the United States that you might bring with you when you go on the program, because like it or not, it doesn't stop at the borders. I think sometimes we think a big change like this might change everything, and it might change certain aspects of your life, but you're also traveling with yourself. So I think there's the phrase, wherever you go, there you are, because you're also going to bring in yourself. So just think through that, and each of you are different, and so that's why we can't go into each topic, but you know best about yourself, and so ask yourself those questions. What am I bringing with me when I travel? Similarly, how do you cope with that thing that you have? Again, let's use anxiety, for example. What do you get anxious in certain scenarios, thinking through those scenarios and how they might apply abroad, and what do you do to help cope with anxiety when you have it? So do that with whatever you are, experiencing, or something that you might have struggled with in the past. Also think about what cultural or identity issues you're bringing with you while you're abroad. So one of the things I would say is, do some research into your host country, especially related around like different conceptions of, gender, sexuality, religion. Those are things you're bringing with you. And the U.S. has a very sometimes state by state view of these things, or regional view of these things. And so how does your country view these, these aspects of your identity that you're bringing with you. So again, think about what you're bringing to the country with you, and think through strategies to help yourself cope with any issues you might encounter while you're abroad. We generally mention think about some coping strategies. Well, we'll give you some common ones. Everyone has their own different way of doing this, but these are common ones you might see mentioned a lot in the media, or among psychologists or therapists, and they are for good reason. A lot of these have been tested through studies and have shown to be very helpful. And so things like mindfulness and meditation, deep breathing exercises, physical exercising, creative expression, talking to people and maintaining that contact with your folks back home, whether that is like family and friends or a therapist. I always recommend, if you do see a therapist here in the United States and they might not be able to provide service overseas because of licensing restrictions, we'll talk to them now about your particular issue and how you might deal with that while you're abroad. Different triggers for yourself, and then come up with a game plan with them. And that's something that they can do, is help walk you through how you would develop a coping plan. Other coping strategies would be like limiting social media access, taking breaks when you feel overwhelmed or anxious, journaling. I think journaling is shown to be a really great tool just because it helps you both reflect on those experiences you might be having on a day-to-day basis, but also process what those things mean to you. And so that reflection and processing is really, really helpful, especially when you're, studying abroad and encountering a new culture and new things for the first time. Setting boundaries, and then when you can, getting out in nature, if that's something that really, that heals you. Next slide, please. Kind of just some best practices, again, some tips and tricks. Culture shock is real. We won't have the time to go into all the stages of culture shock, but I'm sure we all have at least a surface level kind of knowledge of what it is. This is when you enter a country and you have something like a honeymoon period. Everything seems great and new and exciting. And then you might have an adjustment period where you're like, I don't know, and you're struggling a little bit and you're trying to cope your identity or, American way of doing things to a new culture. And so I'd recommend you look at some resources online about culture shock. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and they should help you be able to think through that, especially when you're going through it. You might do a lot of preparation before you go, but just remember that you have resources while you're on the ground too. And I mean, we all have the internet, which is actually a great resource. It can also be a stressor, but it's also a great resource if you're using it wisely. Learning about your host culture. I think throughout my part of this presentation, we'll be talking a lot about educating yourself, learning about your host city, your host country, the host people. And so that definitely applies in terms of like that culture shock factor. We always recommend you to kind of look at some things now before you travel, whether that's local newspapers, films, books, things like that, to start preparing yourself. So it's not just a kind of a rough landing when you enter the country. Staying open-minded. I think we have a way of thinking to ourselves that, our way is the best way sometimes. And so I think part of what we hope people get out of study abroad experience is that you're encountering new ways of doing things, and that's challenging you. Practicing that self-care, again, those coping strategies when you need to, taking that break and seeking familiarity, whether that's like a favorite show or things that you really enjoy about, your home life back here in the United States. Might be just connecting with friends and family. Learning the language, even if you're, abroad for a short time. Say you're going abroad for a whole semester, but you're traveling around on the weekends. Well, do a little research into that country you're traveling into for a weekend. Try to learn some of those phrases. I know from experience when I've traveled abroad, even just very low level gestures like that can be a really welcoming thing with the host community. They love that you're making an effort, and that's at least been my experience. So try to learn some of that. And then asking for help if you need it. And we'll be going over resources too that you can reach out to. Again, as Annalise said, our goal is not to have things escalate into emergency situations, but we do have resources in place. Say you are really struggling and you need assistance, well, you can reach out to us, and we'll go over some more of that later in this presentation. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy to talk a little bit about culture shock and tips and tricks for handling stress abroad.
Yeah, so when I went abroad, I, in my head, had a very different perception of culture shock and what it was than what I actually faced. Like I went into it thinking, okay, well, culture shock, like you won't know certain like social norms, and that will be it, like being corrected or things like that. But I knew a lot of the social norms of South Korea. I knew you didn't like talk loud on a train or a bus. I knew you didn't smile at strangers. Also tip, don't smile at strangers. It's an American thing. So I wasn't really worried. Culture shock never really was on my radar until I went in kind of, not having, I went in having a very kind of like normal degree of anxiety. It was a foreign country. I didn't speak the language. I looked like a foreigner. I was a 14-hour plane ride from my family. And at first I knew that. I wasn't too anxious about it. But when I got there and kind of got adjusted, it elevated to an extent that I didn't ever expect it to. Like I was there and I was suddenly so anxious to go outside and interact with people and like go to my classes. Any free time that I had stressed me out a lot because I was like, what do I do? And at first I didn't realize that it was culture shock because I just thought that I had hidden social anxiety that was crippling. But no, I realized that it was. And like after identifying it, I'm a big believer that knowledge is power. So identifying what it is and then kind of coping with it with the other people that you're studying abroad with, they're going through the same issues, and being patient with yourself, like Sean had mentioned, really, really does help.
Yeah, each of you are going to be bringing that, again, that unique perspective too. And so, we talk about American as a monolithic culture, and it's not either. And so, thinking about what you're bringing to that table, what I mentioned earlier. And I think, I totally agree that knowledge is power. And then what you're also going to be doing is applying knowledge. It's like the knowledge in action when you're actually on the ground. And so some of these things can feel kind of academic when you're reading about like culture shock and things like that, but you'll be feeling it and living it viscerally when you're on the ground. But there's a reason why like culture shock is a good example. There's so much research done into it, just because it's a real thing. So definitely take a look at that before you travel. I'm going to pivot a little bit to physical health. Again, this is where I want you to check in with yourself before you travel and think about like what you're bringing on the program. So thinking about like, are you currently taking any medications for a sickness or for a condition? If so, what's your plan to make sure you can get access to that medication while you're abroad? We have a provider, International SOS, we'll talk about later, that can help with these things. But again, start thinking about that now, because what we want to avoid is you getting on the ground, running out of medication, and we're doing a scramble trying to figure out where we can get this medication. Keep in mind, again, this is something International SOS can help with. There's certain restrictions for medication abroad. A common one can be Adderall for certain locations. And so do some research into your host country about your specific medication before you travel. And again, if you're not sure, you can reach out to International SOS and we'll provide that information to you later here. Same with immunizations, things like that. We've had some students this summer who had they're traveling in Africa. They got some sicknesses that could have probably been avoided with immunization, but it was a suggested immunization versus required, and so they, I think, opted out of it. And so thinking about that, even if there's a suggestion from like the CDC about an immunization in your location, thinking about, well, maybe I should get that. So definitely look into, again, your specific country. If there's any proof of health or records of vaccines, that might a lot of countries have dropped kind of their COVID requirements, but again, this is just something you're going to want to look at before you travel to say, are there any entry requirements for this country in general, but is there any entry requirements related to COVID? Again, I think most countries are not really checking for that anymore, but again, I can't speak for the whole world, and so that's why you got to do a little bit of research. Next slide. To kind of pivot and talk a little bit about some of the resources we have for you. This applies to both mental and physical health. I'm going to talk a little bit about health insurance. And so this is something that you receive as part of your program. This is part of your program fee that you're paying. You get this really excellent health insurance. I always joke and say, I wish we had it here in the United States, just because it has a really high level of coverage. And I've dealt with quite a few incidents in my 2 years at UT, and the health insurance has come in very, very, very handy. So you all have this while you're abroad, just FYI. Next slide. You'll be getting a brochure from program coordinators and PAO in the coming weeks, that, if you haven't already, that will have more information about the actual details of the health insurance coverage, including a benefits brochure. And so the benefits brochure, as health insurance documents can be, it's quite long. I would suggest you read through it just because you want to understand what your coverage is. And it also has some, as a lot of policies do, some fine print details about what applies and what doesn't apply. You don't have to be an expert in insurance. We're here. We can answer questions. So please look through that material when you receive it, and then reach out if you have questions. But just to give you some very, very, very top level highlights, it does include a $500,000 kind of maximum coverage and sickness. That's very high. I've had to work with students that had to be evacuated from a country. Again, very rare. But those would be like $100,000. And so it's good to have a lot of insurance here. $0 deductible. If you're not familiar with using insurance in the United States, usually you have to pay a deductible. It can be anything from like $25 to a couple $100. And so $0 deductible is really great. It means you don't have to pay anything out of pocket just to get that care. Emergency medical and security evacuation benefits are included. And then there is a kind of quarantine related benefit for COVID. So if, say you did get COVID while you were abroad and they had to move you to like where you had to, isolate at a hotel and you were worried about like paying for food and things like that, there's things that can be covered via insurance for a sickness of that nature. Next slide. Like I said, read the information when it's shared for you, understand what's covered, what's not covered, raise questions if you have questions when you first receive it, or if you're abroad and you're not sure about insurance or about accessing medical care. We're always a resource to help you with those, and you can work with your program director and program on that as well. I do want to remind you that this is not travel insurance, and so you can't really use it that way, and quite a few students do try to use it that way. What I mean by travel insurance is things like canceled flights, or you missed a flight to rebook a flight, you lost your luggage. There are some benefits related to that in insurance, but it's usually related to like, I was sick and missed my flight. And so this is health insurance. If you want travel insurance that is not provided by PAO, that's going to be something that you have to look into and purchase yourself. There's a lot of great companies that do it, and it's usually pretty cheap. So if that's something you're interested in, please do look it up online and pick an option that works best for you. But that is not something that is kind of included in this insurance package. Next slide. I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk more about International SOS. So I mentioned them earlier, and they're just a great resource that I wanted to plug for you. So International SOS is our medical security and assistance partner and provider. They do operate 24/7. They have call centers all around the world. So they're just a really great resource. I'm going to share in the chat right now. If you want to click on that, this will log you right into UTK's membership portal with International SOS. That includes a link at the top for a membership ID, which is something that you could print. Unfortunately, they did stop making these like nice wallet cards. I think trying to be more environmentally friendly, but there's one you can print and take with you if you would like, and that's right in this portal. But International SOS is not the same as the health insurance, but they do work with our health insurance. So one of the benefits of using International SOS, if you need assistance, it doesn't have to be an emergency. You say, I need to go find, I'm not feeling very well, I want to find a local clinic in the next day or two. They can help you find that clinic and book an appointment. And in most locations, they can work in the background and pay that clinic directly. So you're not paying anything out of pocket. If you're not utilizing International SOS, oftentimes you're going to have to go to that clinic, pay out of pocket, and seek and submit a reimbursement form through our insurance, which is a different process. So you can do it that way, but it's more efficient to go right through International SOS because they already have that information and can work directly with the providers to do that for you. So I would recommend you reach out to International SOS if you need assistance. If you're going on a faculty directed program through UTK, we're also doing training with those faculty members, so they'll be aware of this. And so if you go to them and say, I need assistance, well, they should also be utilizing International SOS. But just remember, you have access to this, and it's 24/7 access, and they can do the emergency level too. So anything from that, like I just don't feel very well, I need to go in the next few days, or I need assistance right now. So they're a great resource. I did share that link with you. If you log into the portal, it's a really great pre-travel resource, and you can go look at your country if you click this thing at the top called Know My Risks. I'm not going to go through the kind of the screen share, but I do recommend you explore that website. This wheel is how International SOS views themselves. As you can see, they do a lot. Everything from, this, again, the pre-travel resources or briefings. You can reach out to them with those specific questions you might have about like specific medication for a specific country. Their medical team can talk through that with you for free. So there's a lot of information, and you can reach out to them before you travel if you have specific questions. And then if you need assistance while you're abroad, they can also provide that assistance through their call centers. And so it's a great resource. I would recommend you taking a moment right now and scanning this this barcode. Oh, sorry. What do they even call these anymore?
QR
Whatever.
code.
QR code. Thank you. Yes. QR code. If you scan that with your phone, it should open up the App Store if you would like to download the Assistance app. I would recommend the Assistance app. It has a lot of this information, again, about your country that you can look at health and safety risks through the app, but it also has like very easy calling features. So if like you needed assistance automatically, you can go through the app and say, hit a button and it will call them. So it's really helpful. I'd recommend it. You might need that UTK membership number to create a profile and log in. That's on that website, and that membership ID I shared with you, and it's still in the chat, but it's also here on the slide. This information will also be included at the top of your insurance information when you receive that benefits brochure. So you don't have to remember all this right now. It will have International SOS information at the top of that brochure. Next slide. So just to kind of go over, what we talked about, International SOS, that's really that support in the moment, 24/7 assistance. You can also use them for as a resource to look up information before you travel. Chubb is that insurance that you might have to use for, to help pay for medical care you receive abroad, but it can be post-incident. And that would be, again, going through the reimbursement or claims process. Again, if you work with International SOS, they can usually pay that for you, so you don't have to go through that reimbursement process. But if you don't use them, then you would have to do a reimbursement. You pay out of pocket. Usually it's pretty cheap, actually, compared to the United States prices. But you pay out of pocket, save your receipts, and then you would submit a claim for reimbursement, and we would help you with that process. Just in general, we always like to plug the CDC and the State Department. I talk about knowledge is power and researching before you travel. Take a look at, especially at the State Department travel advisories for your country. Every country is going to have something from like level 1 to level 4. You're all probably going to like a level 1 or level 2 destination, but still you can read through the travel advisory and just see what the State Department is kind of urging in terms of like things to avoid or things to be aware of in your host location. All right, so I'm going to pivot a little bit to a case study. Again, these are coming from real student experiences. You're 2 weeks into your program in Ghana, and you start to develop a cough. Local staff tell you it's probably malaria. You've been taking your medication and feel fine. Apart from the cough, what do you do next? So think about that for, I don't know, we'll give you 30 seconds. And then I think similar to last time, put some thoughts in the chat.
Yeah, we can take about 20 seconds or so, and then everybody can drop in at once. Except for Ava and Zach.
All right, anyone else?
All right. Yeah, I think about 20 seconds has been. Anybody else would add anything there in the chat?
All right. Yeah, I think, we put this here in at this part of the presentation for a reason, which is to really underline some of these resources we're sharing with you. I'd recommend you call International SOS. They can give you that medical advice to find a local clinic. I think one thing I would like to highlight in that case study is somebody saying, oh, it's probably malaria. Well, let's go make sure what you have is what you have. And so that's where we'd recommend you find that local trusted hospital or clinic, and International SOS can help you do that. And then, especially if you're on a faculty directed program through UTK faculty, or if you're going on a provider program, affiliate program, reach out to that program leadership, because whether that's the UTK or you're working through a provider like ISA, someone mentioned earlier, they're going to have protocols about assisting students getting to clinics and things like that, making sure you can get, you have access to, like, whether that's like a taxi or whatever transportation method they have for that program. So do work with your program leadership as well, and they'll help you navigate that situation.
Sean,
But yeah,
can I
use
make a comment too on behalf of Programs Abroad?
Yes.
I think, there's a lot of information being thrown at you today. And there's also going to be a lot of decisions that you have to make while you're abroad if you're not feeling well, right? Because your roommate's going to be telling you something. Your program leader's going to be telling you something. The person in Ghana is going to be telling you something, right? And so really the bottom line is call International SOS. The idea is this is your way to advocate for yourself, to speak with somebody on the phone, that you don't have to leave immediately to go to the clinic. They're going to find you a clinic. They're going to give you advice because it's actual medical people on the phone, right? So as easy as it's going to be to listen to your roommate to go to the clinic up the street, before you do that, please call International SOS, right? There are so many cases that we support with while students are abroad that had students called International SOS earlier. They could have gotten the support they needed, the care they needed, the medicine they needed so much faster. So just a plug from us, like, I'm pleading with you, call International SOS, right? They are a great, great service, and it is a great resource for you here.
And I would highlight that, not every clinic and not every doctor is made equal. And so part of what International SOS does is look at individual like clinics and doctors and hospitals to say, like, this is the one I'd recommend you go to because they have high standards. They've done that kind of research, or they can do that research on your behalf. So yeah, reach out to them. And they do have a medical team. They have a doctor on call, so they can review case notes. Say it's a more complicated case. If you share that information with International SOS, their medical team will look at it and make sure you're getting adequate care. So they're really great. All right, I'm going to pivot a little bit to safety, and I want to echo what Annalise said. I know there's a lot of information, so just bear with us, please. But anyway, safety, common incidents abroad. So we're going to talk a little bit about the incidents we actually see happen, and then just general incidents, safety risks that you just have to be aware of. Again, partially it's going to be doing research, but partially it's going to be kind of like in the United States, knowing how to react in a situation. So what we actually see more related to health and like the safety aspect is a loss or stolen items, passports, wallets, phones, luggage. This is where we would always recommend, especially when you're out in public locations, not flashing around your iPhone. Same with like expensive cameras and things like that, because you can even be walking down the street and, in Rome, and somebody will drive by on a moped and grab your purse from you. So, I mean, just being thoughtful about your kind of belongings when you're out in public, especially public transportation as well. That's a common area of kind of like pickpockets. If you haven't seen the pickpocket woman on TikTok, I think that's in Milan. She's always calling out pickpockets. It's actually really helpful and educational in terms of like exercising that situational awareness of especially when you're around a lot of people and it's kind of a confusing situation. So think about your wallet, think about your phone. I would always, what I do when I'm abroad, usually I have my wallet in my back pocket. I put things in like my front pocket. Some people will get kind of a carrying necklace you can get for like phones and wallets and things like that. They kind of might look a little nerdy, but hey, it's better than shelling out $1,200 for a new iPhone. So I'd recommend looking into those as well. Unfortunately, what else we see is a lot of alcohol related incidents. I think there's a lot of temptation, especially if you're not 21 in the United States, that you might be going to a new location where, you are legally allowed to drink alcohol, and then tends to go a little bit overboard. And so again, we're speaking from real life experience of not just people drinking and getting sick or getting hungover and missing class, which is not excuse absence, but getting into physical injuries, fights. I had a student that tried to steal a moped once and was arrested because he was drunk. So there's a lot of different kind of cases and reasons why we always are saying, for your own health and safety, minimize that alcohol or don't get overly inebriated. I'm not pretending we live in a world where people are not going to drink. And so if you do drink, making sure you are being thoughtful, again, surrounding yourself with other people you know and that will take care of you and look out for each other and things like that. And then, of course, what we have is interpersonal conflicts. You might be living with somebody you've never met before. You're going to be in spending a lot of time with classmates, both in like housing situations, but also on, excursions and field trips. And it's just a lot of time. And so, we can get on each other's nerves. And so we do see that from time to time. What we always try to say is like, let's try to nip the problem in the bud when it's still just a slight problem or a slight annoyance, so it doesn't escalate into a full-scale conflict among your peers. So let us know, let your program director know if there's something happening with like interpersonally. If you're having issues with roommates, let them know early, so we can try to address it and help you have a better experience. These are the higher level kind of global safety risks. Again, unlikely to happen, but it's just something you need to be aware of. I compare it to the United States. We have if I was briefing somebody to come here, I'd be talking about mass shootings. When a lot of other countries don't have that problem, but it is a problem in the United States. Is it likely you're going to be in a mass shooting event in the United States? No, but it does happen. So you need to prepare yourself and think about like, what would I do in that situation? So the same idea applies to like natural disasters and terrorism, the political civil unrest, things like that. If something was happening like a natural disaster, terrorism, we would be reaching out to you all, to program directors, to manage that situation. So it's not like we would just say, that happened, that sucks. We would be involved and you'd be hearing from us. Similar to your health, just thinking through, okay, if that did happen, and I'm not, again, trying to produce anxiety, but it's that knowledge is power idea again. And so thinking about like, what would I do if my wallet was stolen? What would I do if my passport was stolen? What would I do if there's a major event in my city? And partially, if you're not sure, those are good questions to ask your program leadership as well, because each program is going to have a slightly different response to these things based on country, location. You might be traveling a lot. So those are good questions to ask your program leadership, especially when each program should be giving you an in-country orientation session, and they should be going over health and safety issues with you. And so raise those questions, concerns then as well. Next slide. Just general safety guidelines or even just tips, making sure you have your cell phone. Again, being careful with your cell phone and not flashing your cell phone around, but it is it is a tool we use now in the 21st century in our everyday lives. And so, of course, it's a very helpful tool in terms of your safety if you need assistance, things like that. So make sure you are carrying your cell phone and that you're keeping it charged. Some people, when they're going abroad in particular, will get those emergency kind of recharging batteries, which can be really helpful. And then also make sure you're looking before you travel into converters for your plugs. You can always buy those on the ground when you get there, but they can be more expensive. So you might want to look into that now. As I said earlier, just utilizing your in-country resources, including that program leadership. If you are having issues, that's what they're there for. Of course, they're there to help teach and guide you, but they're also there to help address health and safety concerns you might have or issues. So please use them. Using that common sense, especially if you're going out at night and having a drink or two, using that buddy system, and please never leave your buddy behind. We've had some incidents this summer where, because they used the buddy system, they could have been in a really bad situation, and they actually, they still reported the incident to us, but they were able to help each other navigate it in a better way. And then just I think intuition is really powerful, and we don't always pay attention to it. So to tap into that intuition when you can, you kind of know when something feels off. And so if something does feel off, don't ignore it. Again, if you utilize your resources or get yourself out of that situation if needed. Next slide. All right, I'm going to turn it back over, I think, to Amy again and talk a little bit about safety abroad.
Yep, back to me. So kind of some of the tips that I had written down from remembering is, always have your phone on you, and have an international SIM card or phone, some access that you can use. Or for me, I knew that in cities in South Korea, Wi-Fi was everywhere, and I was only going to be there for a month. So I knew that I was probably going to be fine just like relying on Wi-Fi, but I always made sure to have a friend that had an international phone or just some way that I could contact help if I needed to at all points in time. Also, I think it's good to remember the emergency number there. Like in South Korea and many other places in the world, it is not 911. In South Korea, it was 119. Granted, hopefully, of course, we're never going to have to use that. I never had to use it, but it was just something I think to keep tucked away in your brain just in case. I also think it's important to know contact information super early. Not only contact information with us, like International SOS, but also while you're there. For example, my roommate that I stayed with, she was from the States. She was from Georgia. And right immediately as she got to the airport, her card got frozen and she couldn't pay for like her COVID test that she had to take to be let into the country. She couldn't pay for a taxi. We weren't in Seoul, so she had to go from the Seoul airport down to Gwangju. She didn't have, her card was frozen, so she couldn't buy a ticket for the train. And so luckily with the affiliate program that we were with, we were kind of connected to students that were already there at the university. It was like kind of a buddies system. And she was able to contact her buddy that was there and was like, hey, I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. It's like 2 a.m. in the States. I can't get my card unfrozen because the banks aren't open. And so they were able to like come meet her, help her, and then get her on her way. So I think just knowing things like that is really important for staying safe.
Thanks so much, Amy. And I think this is a good point to remind you too that there's the student guide, before you go, and this has a lot of information about health and safety. We're giving you that kind of overview just because we only have a limited amount of time with you, but there's a lot of information, best practices in there, and resources, including the ones we're sharing with you today. So do look at that guide and use it when you're abroad and before you travel. So talking about the buddy system, as I mentioned and as Amy just mentioned, we're going to go through a case study. So you're walking home with 3 friends at 2:30 a.m. after night on the town. You notice a person has been following your group for the last 10 blocks or so. You walk a few more blocks to be sure. You all then decide to step into the lobby of the first hotel you see and ask for assistance. They encourage you to sit in their lobby and wait a few minutes, and then they call you an Uber. So think about that scenario. I guess before we put it in the chat, we'll put it in the chat in like 30 seconds. So just think about it. And what would they do? What would you kind of do next? But what's going on here in terms of like what was done well, what's maybe not going so well in this scenario?
Yeah, when these situations come before Sean and myself, we're always analyzing after what's a yes behavior and what's a wow, no behavior, right? So we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit here and think about, okay, what are things good about what you just read? If this were you, what did you do right? And then what are some things that you would not or should not have done based on what you're reading here?
All right. Does anyone want to put anything in the chat now? There's some good stuff coming through here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, partially this is a nice test of that. Again, that intuition with like, what would you do in that situation?
Right. Ready for the
All right.
game?
Yep, let's do it.
Do it.
So a few good things. Buddy system, again, it could have been a much worse scenario if somebody's walking home by themselves, and maybe that person that was following them would be more emboldened to pursue them if it was a single person. And finding a place to ask for help and just willing to ask for help in the first place. I think one thing I would want to stress for you all is that I think a lot of people don't want to ask for help because they fear looking stupid or unknowledgeable, and no. Ask for help if you need help. In general, in life, ask for help if you need help. That's what we're here for as humans, and people want to help each other. So if you need help, ask for help. Some bad things I would maybe not change if I could. I think somebody brought this up in the chat. I think if you again trusting that intuition, if you know this a creepy person following you for a while, maybe start looking a little bit earlier in terms of if you can duck into a hotel or ask for assistance, even from, you know, other people. Sometimes just getting, especially if you're in a part of the city that's more deserted, getting yourself to a more lively location can be very helpful too. And then I think just in general, it's a very fine detail in the description, but maybe I would book my own, you know, Uber versus having somebody else book an Uber for me, because it's tied to your account, all that type of stuff. We do see this thing in the news every once in a while, like these Uber abductions, usually in the United States, not abroad. But part of the benefit of using these apps is that they are tied to your account and it follows like your location and things like that. And a lot of them have introduced those safety features, kind of like what you can do on campus with WalkSafe, where you can tie it to somebody and they can monitor your progress if needed. So I'd recommend looking into that. Okay. We'll do another case study. So this is trying to just kind of drive home some of these points for y'all. So this one's concerning and kind of a missing student situation. You wake up one morning and discover that your roommate hasn't returned home from the night before. You gather your friends and decide to call him. You don't hear anything, and then you decide to all head on to the first activity of the day together. So what was kind of good things and bad things in the scenario above here? Give it again 30 seconds and then drop anything in the chat. So another like 20 seconds. What's first, Annalise? Is it good? Yeah. Okay.
Good.
So any good things anyone wants to call out? Well, in general, I think the fact that you realize your roommate's not there, never came home, is actually helpful. You know, you can be a source of an issue arising. It doesn't need to be them saying, I need help. It's like, oh, my roommate never came home. And that's kind of weird for that person. Maybe it's not so weird for them, but still, you know, it's something that you notice and that you're kind of, that intuition was kicking in. You asked a few other people, hey, do you know where they are? No one really seemed to know. And then try to reach out to that student, but again, didn't hear from them. Some things I would change. You got to know, I would notify the program leader. I think sometimes the intuition is to not. Yeah, exactly, Robbie. You don't want to get your friend in trouble, but I think, you know, we care about their health and safety. And so reach out if you have questions, or let the program leader know, like, so-and-so wasn't at home last night. I don't know where they are. They could be totally fine, but just raising that as an issue, because then we'll usually talk to that program leader and come up with a plan, just to make sure that student is okay. So again, it can just be a concern. You can say, I don't know if this is actually an issue, but I just wanted to put this on your radar to that program leader, and then they can take it from there. And that you don't have to worry about it, right? Push that over there if you need to. And then, of course, that roommate, if they did indeed go out alone, should not go out alone. Buddy system.
And I think it's really easy to, you know, sit and wonder what's going to happen to me, or what am I going to have to experience when I go abroad? But the next layer is, what if something happens to somebody I know who is abroad with me, or in my group, or my roommate, right? And so while it's not like you have this required responsibility, there's also this, you know, situational awareness that's important. You have more influence than you probably think with your relationships and the friendships that you have, right? And so being able to say, hey, don't go out alone, that's not smart. There is value in that, right? So it was really important for us to share this particular case study as that second layer of, it might not happen directly to you, but you might be on the periphery, right? And what are some things that you could do in those situations?
Right. And I think also, you know, thinking about if you were that person that was leaving and not coming home, your friends might be worried about you, you know, roommate, but, you know, letting people know where you are. If you're not, like, again, I would always use the buddy system. Chances are, especially if you're going abroad for a long period of time, you're not always going to be with buddies, but letting people know where you are, people in the program, whether it's, you know, program leaders, friends on the program, even your parents, if you're traveling, your parents or guardians, if you're traveling on the weekends, somebody should know where you are, because if something happens, people are gonna be like, where are they? Where are they? You know, and so please let them know. Okay, so pivoting to the last part of the health and safety section, which you're all, I'm sure, excited about. We're going to talk a little bit about emergencies versus non-emergencies. So this is, we're going to give you a couple more of these resources. Again, you don't have to worry about like getting these all down, but just generally speaking, talk through a couple scenarios and what you should do in those situations. So next slide, please. So how do we define emergencies? These are the various highest level issues, things that you would define as an emergency on campus. It's going to be the same, like a severe accident, something that's threatening your life or the life of another person, or severe injury of another person or yourself. Attack or assault obviously can be an emergency situation. Local or world event that could threaten your health and safety. So again, might be that natural disasters or terrorism, big events that you can't always know are coming, but can still impact you. These are all different types of emergency situations. Non-emergencies: lost, stolen credit card, rescheduled, delayed, or missed flight, mild illness like allergies or the common cold. These are things that we, especially program leadership, can help address, but they don't entail calling them emergency phone in the middle of the night. We're going to give you our emergency phone number. You probably all remember us going over this in the spring if you were at those sessions, and yet a couple of weeks after that, I was carrying our emergency phone and I got a call 3 a.m. Somebody's flight was canceled. And so I was like, well, we're going to have to, work with the airline, let your program leader know. All the things we're talking about now, I guess, did not sink in. I can't help really much with a middle of the night program flight issue. I don't have control over the airlines. So please don't call our emergency phone number about that. In general, every situation is going to be a little bit different. So this is trying to give you a general framework to think about, because there are so many different types of resources. Something Amy had put in the chat was about the 911 equivalent, or she had mentioned the 911 equivalent. And so I shared this in the spring. I'll share it with you now. This is a resource from the State Department that has the 911 equivalents abroad. So you can go and look at your country and kind of, what I would recommend you do is put that in your phone now, like whatever phone you're using, or if you buy a phone when you arrive, saving that in your phone, so you don't have to quite remember. You can pull it up really quickly if needed. But just remember that not every country is going to have their 911 be 911. And then some countries might have different numbers for police, fire, and ambulance. So this is all things you can look at right now with that link I just shared. So an emergency situation, if this is a high level emergency, you got hit by a car, call 911. Call 911 for the things you would call 911 for here in the United States. It's a high level emergency. I need an ambulance. I need police. ISOS is a great resource, but it's not going to be for that immediate, I need people on the ground here now. So call that 911 equivalent if you need that emergency assistance. I'd recommend also, reaching out to your program leader, communicate with this. This is what we mean by like program leader, in-country program contact. We had to phrase it that way because not everyone has a UTK program leader. Some of you guys are going on affiliate programs. Each program is going to have a 911, or not 911, but an emergency health and safety contact that usually is going to be 24/7. And so I'd recommend reaching out to them next on this ranking, because they might have those in-country resources or protocols that they're going to enact in response to the situation. So again, pay attention in your in-country briefings or in-country orientation sessions where they'll share that information, and save it in your phone. And then international SOS, you can always use international SOS, but in terms of a ranking, if I had to rank them, calling international SOS if you need to find a clinic, or you have a question or concern, and they can help answer that, but it's not quite the same immediate response as a police officer or a fire brigade or an ambulance. But it is a 24/7 service that you can use. And then we do have our emergency phone as well. That's ranked towards the end here, just because we're usually going to be utilizing those other 3 resources. So we can help do that and coordinate efforts and things like that. But we're going to be utilizing international SOS. We're going to be reaching out to program director or program leadership and kind of help coordinate that. But it is a resource that you can always use as well. And that's 24/7. So yeah, just make sure you understand those. Again, look at the student guide. It has all that information. You don't have to memorize everything right here, right now. And again, save it in your phone now, or as soon as you buy that new phone in the host country, save it in your phone then. I'd recommend you enroll in the State Department's Smart Travel Enrollment Program. Benefit of enrolling in that program is they will send you alerts if something's happening in your country, or there's something that embassy staff want you to know about. So can someone maybe put that in the chat while I'm talking? So you can sign up now. It's very fast, and I'd recommend you do that. Saving these numbers, again, the 911 equivalent, your program contacts. So it might be some program leaders will be utilizing, especially like GroupMe and things like that. Each program is going to be a little bit different. So pay attention to how they say to reach out, and then ask them if you're not sure, like say, who do I reach out to if I have a question or like an issue, an incident in the middle of the night? And usually there's going to be this 24/7 kind of program specific contact. Our emergency number and international SOS, and then making those hard copies and digital copies, passport, visa, especially saving something to like Google Drive or up in the cloud, or email them to yourself copies of these things, passport, visa. If you need a vaccine card for COVID, for example, the international insurance information, when we send it to you, save a copy of that so that you can access it very quickly if needed as well. And then share those copies of those with family, friends, guardians, people on the ground that can also assist, because if you're having issues providing those things, they might be able to provide them to you or to us or to whomever is helping in an emergency situation. And finally, just some reminders. Please do monitor your UT and program organization or host university email account. I'll give you a quick example so say there's a big level event in your country or in your city, a terrorist attack, for example. We're going to be working with our program leaders to check in with you all to make sure you're okay. And so usually, because it's the quickest way, that'll be a mass email to the group saying, please respond. We just want to make sure you're okay. You don't need assistance. If we're not hearing back via email, that's when we're going to start moving to the phone, trying to call you, trying to text you. And then if needed, I'll be switching over to like social media. And I do that. I've had to use that multiple times. And sometimes that's the only one that's worked, is that I'm DMing some person that I found. I'm like, okay, this is the UT student so-and-so. And here's a DM from Sean Linker. Hey, this is UTK Health and Safety. We just want to make sure you're doing okay. So to avoid that, just monitor your email, please, or your phone. Yep. So if in those situations that we would be checking in with you, it might be from your program leader. If we can't hear from them, that's when we would be initiating it here back in the United States, but somebody would be initiating this check-in. And then if we do check in, please do respond to us, because we're just trying to make sure you're okay and you don't need assistance. I think that's everything in the health and safety realm. Again, that's a lot of questions. I'm going to turn it over to Annalise. I'm also going to drop my email in the chat, because I do recognize that you might not feel comfortable asking questions in front of a large group about a specific question or concern you have. And so you can always feel free to reach out to me directly as well. And that's what I'm here for. So, but I'll turn it over to you, Annalise.
Thanks so much, Sean. Okay, cool. I'm muted. Thank you so much, Sean. So we are rounding out to the very end. I promise you we're going to end on time. We've just got a couple of other things to think about, right? Packing, behavioral expectations, that still applies, code of conduct, all of those great things that apply while you are abroad, and then staying connected to us and letting us know how things are going and how you can do that. Okay, so the first thing to think about, weather, climate, as you pack, right? Does your destination have a rainy or cold season? For example, if you go to Costa Rica right now, you need to bring rain boots. It will rain every single day, right? It's not doing that here. At the same time, it's not going to be as hot there, right? So you need to think about the difference. Just because it's hot in Knoxville doesn't mean that it's summertime anywhere else. So think about weather and climate as you pack. Think about what is culturally appropriate. And if you are like, I do not know what is culturally appropriate, one, we'll give you some tips to do some research. We have a student guide that you can look through. And 2, err on the side of caution. So for most destinations, it's going to be a good idea to avoid tank tops, short skirts, showing a lot of skin, for example. Err on the side of caution until you feel more comfortable and feel like you've gained a better grasp of what's culturally appropriate in your region. Think about your program activities, okay? Are you hiking or walking a lot, right? You're gonna need comfortable closed-toed shoes. Are you doing water activities? You need sunscreen, etc. Personal medications, we kind of touched on this already, but make sure that you have the original prescription, your name's on the bottle. Do you have enough for your entire program? If you have 21 days, you might need 21 pills, right? So be thinking about those things as you get ready and start your packing process. As well, think about your luggage and belongings, right? I know some of you are doing very long-term programs, so you will need to check a bag. If you are doing a short-term program, or if you are traveling anything less than 2 weeks, please don't check a bag. It's going to make your life so much easier, right? Think about, what it might feel like to drag a rolly suitcase across a bunch of gravel, as opposed to having a big backpack, right? Think about those things as you think about what works for you as you pack and get ready for your program. Also, how are you going to safeguard all of your documents so you're not leaving your passport in the bathroom like Amy, right? How are you going to make sure you know where your insurance information is and all of those good things, right? Also think about, what do you really need to bring? Do you need to bring the most expensive camera, your drone, all of that stuff? Or are those things better left at home, right? Have those hard conversations with yourself as you are packing and getting ready to go. All right, very briefly, if you remember Sean's 3 a.m. call on the emergency phone story. You arrived to the airport 3 hours early, but the line to check in is out the door. You end up missing your flight by 15 minutes. What do? You can go ahead and drop it in the chat, as well as what do you not do? Put that in there too. What are you not going to do when you miss your flight? Okay, don't call the international SOS. Good. Do not call us at the emergency number. No. The other reason for not doing this is that's not going to get you the fastest support. Thank you, Gabriela. Yes, reschedule with your airline. Let your program leader know, right? Those are the 2 things that you need to be doing. Find a gate agent at the airport. Explain to them what's going on, right? That's the fastest way that you're going to get a resolution to your problem. The second thing you're going to do, once you have a better idea of what's going on, contact your program leader and let them know. The other thing I just want to remind you, if you've never missed a flight before, I get it. It can be very shocking and anxiety provoking, right? Totally understand that empathy is 100% there. At the same time, remember this, your program leader has had people miss flights before. Airlines have had people miss flights before. They're going to help you. And so the best thing you can do is just stay calm and remember you are not the first person to have gone through this, and there is a protocol and a process for it to get fixed. I promise you.
And to jump in real quick, so to the 3 a.m. call I got, 2:30 a.m., whatever it was, the airline had just canceled the flight, so they weren't even at the airport yet. They were due to fly out in the morning, so I get that's very anxiety inducing as well. So basically they did let their program leader know, but it was the middle of the night, so the program leader wasn't responding, and so I guess that's partially why they were calling, to make sure that we knew. But basically I can do exactly the same thing. I can't help you rebook it, so you're gonna have to talk to the airline, and we can let your program leader know, but they had already let them know. I'm like, you did that, and that's all we can really do. But I understand it's a really stressful situation, but at the same time, we can't really do much. We want you to make sure you're letting your program know, and then talking to the airline, which I know is also a very annoying process.
Okay. This is a reminder here as well in terms of your behavioral, agreement. This is included in your application process. It's included online in the VolsAbroad portal, and it's just a reminder of the code of conduct does apply while you are abroad. And if you violate the UT code of conduct abroad, it is as if you violated it here. That's the first thing. The second thing to remember is you are not a citizen of the country that you are going to. So please do not act like a citizen of the country that you are going to, right? There is some respect there that we all should have for not being a citizen, being a guest in a person's country. And that's just an important thing, I think, to take to heart, right? In terms of we walk around here with certain rights as US citizens, if you are a US citizen, and wherever your host country is, if you are not, or home country is, if you are not a citizen, you walk around with certain rights and expectations. You do not always have all of those rights and expectations when you are abroad. So be very careful and mindful of the respect that you show as a guest in another country. That also goes to others on your program. As you can see here, this concept of Vols help Vols, right? You are helping others. You are acting kindly and strategically and advocating for yourself with your academic leaders and your program leaders. And you're being kind to yourself. If you need help, you're reaching out to us, to your program leader, or to somebody who can help you. All right, finally, here are ways that you can stay connected to us while you are abroad. So we have our own social media that you can follow us on and tag us in. And you also have the opportunity to do a takeover if you want to on Instagram. So if you want to do that, reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction to make that happen. They're really fun and it's always just super exciting when students do an Instagram takeover for us. All right, so we are coming to the close of the programming today with 8 minutes to spare. As I said in the beginning, if you took the mandatory assessment in April, you do not need to take it again, nor should you receive the email. If you do receive the email, that means it's probably an error on our part because we're checking for who's already taken it, okay? The other thing is that we've also prepared for you a Know Before You Go student guide. If we can drop that in the chat. This is an additional resource for you to have that helps you think through all the things we've been talking about. Packing list, what are you going to do with your medicine, your passport? Thinking about culture shock, what is your identity? What is the privilege and power that you bring while you are abroad, right? To start reflecting on those things before you actually depart. We are here if you need us. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I'll also hang around for a little while for anybody who just has a specific situation where they might want to come off mute and just ask us. But if you are confident and excited and ready to go and feel like you have received this information and without any questions, you are free to go. Thank you so much for your time. And we're so excited for you to get started on your program here very soon.
I had one question.
Yeah.
So I submitted my visa, I believe on Friday, and I overnighted it for Saturday. And I was a little confused about the proof of financial means. So I had my dad sign an affidavit of support and submitted all of that. But do I need like an additional bank statement with the affidavit?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I don't see you. I don't know who's speaking, to be honest. Tell me what country you're going to and what program you're on.
I'm going to Milan, I believe with Catalika.
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, I have the affidavit, but I didn't include an additional bank statement. I just wasn't sure if you needed both or one or the other.
Yeah, so the visa application is actually with the country itself. And so usually they should direct you to the specific requirements that you need. Tessa, I know you support with visa applications to Italy more broadly. Is there anything you would add here to help support this student?
So you should always be including the bank statement in your visa application. It's just if the name on that bank statement doesn't have your name either as the primary holder or a joint holder, it's your parents' name, that's when you also you also submit the affidavit. So yes, you would need both the bank statement and the affidavit.
Makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? You can put them in the chat as well.
Any
Again, if
questions
you
about
feel
that?
like you have what you need, you can go.
Just from Andy Agnew, just for clarification, if we do not receive the email for the assessment, we do not need to complete it, correct? I can't recall if I've done it. I'm already abroad. If you do not receive the email, you do not need to do it, correct?
Right.
There's some double negatives there, but yeah, you don't need it
So
unless
very
you get.
much.
Yeah,
Wait
No
for
worries.
email, complete assessment. And if you don't get the email, yeah, you're all good. Don't have to complete the assessment.
Where will the recorded Zoom be published?
So the Zoom is already up on from April is already up on our website. And so it's in the same link, I think, that Christian posted, that Programs Abroad Know Before You Go page. And we're just going to replace it, replace that recording with it. So somebody want to drop maybe the shorter link of just the Programs Abroad pre-departure materials?
There it is. Thank you, Christian. Yep. So that is you can see on that page the old pre-departure on there. Please do take a look at that student guide. It is it has a recap of basically a lot of what we talked about. A lot of the resources we shared will have like direct links to web pages and things like that. So it's a really helpful. Well, at least we hope it's helpful.
Hello, I have a question.
Sure.
I was the student that was waiting in the waiting room for a long time.
Oh, no. Yes.
Is there a recording of this meeting that I can watch?
Yes. So
Okay, great.
yeah, it's currently being recorded, and it's going to be that link that Christian just put. It's going to be right there. That's where we're going to put it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry you got stuck in the waiting room. But glad you're here. Glad you made it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if this question's already been answered. I had to hop in a few minutes late. So I know that certain countries, like, you have to report what like prescription medicines you're bringing into the country. Do you know where that should be done?
So it depends on the country. Some countries you fill out an entry form while you're on the plane before you touch down. Some countries you do like a pre-entry form online where they may ask for it. Some countries you fill it out in immigration, and then others not at all. So I say that just to say there's not always a direct answer there's not a complete direct answer to your question. Where are you going, if that's helpful?
Japan.
Japan. Okay. We can certainly do some research, I think, to help you, but I think that regardless, the immigration office is going to reach out to you with whatever they need if they need it, whether that's before, on the plane, what have you.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Hey, y'all, I'm back.
Oh, good.
Did I cut anyone off?
You did not. No, we were just kind of hanging out and seeing if anybody else had questions or thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, I just kind of thought of another question. The cultural diversity and agility course, IB 489 or something like that.
Mhm.
I actually can't get the badges onto my LinkedIn. Does anybody have any recommendations there? I tried using Badger, but it won't verify the badges in Badger because it's saying that it wasn't awarded to the correct email address. Well, I'm definitely using my UTK email address.
Yeah, so just a quick caveat for everybody else on the call. If you have never heard of IB 489, that's okay. That is a specific requirement for business students traveling abroad on a program. So just know if that's unfamiliar to you, that's okay. Andy, to your question, I would reach out to somebody in the Programs Abroad office, specifically in Haslam, because I know they kind of create that and kind of manage it and cultivate it. We can also let them know on your behalf that somebody was having trouble with the badge piece. Do you have a contact there directly that you can reach out to? If not, we can give you one.
Yes, I certainly do. And I really appreciate that information,
Yeah.
Annalise.
No problem.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great summer.
Bye.
Thank you. Gabriella, I put that in the chat. You know, I haven't really looked at this before, but it just might be something to look at. But I'd also, you can ask International SOS about it. Just explain what you're trying to bring in, and they should be able to help you navigate that.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Ava, yes, assessment will be emailed to you.
I had a question. I'm going to be abroad in Florence for the year, and I was just wondering about like the whole phone situation, because I know I need to get like, my friends that have gone abroad there said that you could get a TIM card, but my phone, like the iPhones don't have SIM cards in them anymore. So like, is it hard to just get a new phone and a like whole plan in a situation like that?
It's a good question. So I invite our team to kind of chat in or come off mute. What I would recommend personally, I don't think it's hard to get an unlocked phone or purchase one. They're generally not expensive. They're not going to be as high quality, right? If you're only spending a little bit of money on them, but it should be fairly easy to buy an unlocked phone. And that's where you could buy that Italian SIM card to place in, right? And that way you'll always have mobile access and mobile data while you're abroad. And then if you want to keep using your iPhone, then you can download, you know, WhatsApp to it and have the Wi-Fi access and use it that way, right? And then just know that you keep that unlocked phone just for emergencies or when you're out, you know, and about and don't have access to Wi-Fi. But I invite the team to kind of put their heads together if there's anything else you would recommend here that I missed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Allie. Thank you for it.
I lived abroad a decade ago, and that was similar. You know, at the time, it was really expensive to add like a global plan. I think it's come down a lot. But buying a in-country phone and then having my personal phone, which I would use in Wi-Fi areas, which has also increased a lot. So it wasn't that bad, but I just would carry two phones basically. If you do get a new phone, share that information with your program director though, so you have both phones.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.